And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 7's Google Hangout with Ryan Bano and myself for Introduction to Learning Technologies. And this week's guest is us. We've had 6 other guests before this, and we have some more coming up in the final weeks. But this week's topic is something that Ryan and I both use a lot. And so we thought that maybe we would take a little break from bringing in guests, and you get to encounter us. So just as a reminder, because this is for Introduction to Learning Technologies, if you want to ask any questions, you can either post them in the discussion forum if you're in the course, and if you're not, you can send a tweet using the hashtag ILT_USask, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you have. So good morning from my frosty Saskatoon.
Yeah, very frosty. It's about as cold as it gets.
Yeah. There you go. So we did have a few questions to come in, but I want to give you a little bit of background on, I guess, maybe on how we got started using these. And I started using social bookmarking several years ago as a way of, I had heard, just like everybody else, when I needed to bookmark a page, I would save it in my browser, or I would email it to myself if I needed to access it on another computer. And then I heard that there were web tools. At the time, I was introduced to Delicious, and that allowed me to bookmark anything, and I could access my bookmarks anywhere, which just seemed phenomenal to me. And so I was using Delicious, and I noticed if you haven't watched the videos and you're behind in the course, you can use social bookmarking tools to bookmark anything and to add tags so that you can easily find your bookmarks later. And you have an option on a bookmark basis when it comes to Delicious, or Diigo at least, to have private or public bookmarks on an individual bookmark basis. In both, I think you can have groups and where you can share bookmarks together. You can tag in both of them, and so it's really quite handy. I started using Diigo sometime later, and I really like the annotation features in that. It's quite handy, and it has all the other features of Delicious that I liked, and it integrates quite well with Evernote in that if I make annotations on a page with Diigo, then I can save it, I can capture it with Evernote, and I have all those annotations later, or just leave them in Diigo, and any time I log into Diigo and I go to that website, I'll see all of my highlights and any notes that I left, which is really quite handy. I didn't start using Evernote, though, until a couple of years ago, right after Ryan and I started working together, and he was raving about Evernote. And I had tried it before, but I just didn't see the catch. And then he showed me a little bit more about it, and I've been hooked ever since. And so I'll hand this over to Ryan, and maybe you can tell us a bit about how you got started using these tools.
All right. So thanks, Heather. So my experience with social bookmarking fairly similar to yours. I didn't really use bookmarks at all before social bookmarking because I didn't really. It just seemed like a lot of work and to be tied into one browser. And yeah, if there was a site that I really wanted, like you said, I kind of would just send an email to myself about it or something like that, or I guess just remember it. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but I know that I probably never had more than a handful of bookmarks ever before I used these tools. And then I think when I started my master's, I think maybe I started using Delicious as a way to kind of save bookmarks, and it seemed to make sense being able to do it across computers, across devices, things like that. And then from that, I think it just kind of transformed into using Diigo instead. I think it was just more common in the program I was in to use Diigo. And I recall that using Delicious on my Android phone was fairly difficult. So that was something I didn't necessarily like about using Delicious at the time, but that was whatever 4 or 5 years ago now, so it's probably become better than that. So I think Diigo might have had a bit of a lead at that time, but I think both those tools are pretty similar. But then when it came to Evernote, that was actually, again, right when I started in the master's program, and somewhere in there, I think Dr. Rick Schwer mentioned something about Evernote, and I was really interested in using anything he was going to suggest using. So I basically, that's when I started using it. I started using it when I started taking a class with him, and I was primarily in the first place using it just as kind of a note-taking tool for the we had Blackboard Collaborate sessions each week in that class. And that's how I started using Evernote. I was using it to take notes in those classes, and then basically it was saved in Evernote, and I could access it from different computers, things like that. But that's kind of just how I started using it, and then I started tagging it with the class it was for, and then it just kind of took off from there. So you move into another class, start tagging things in that class, and start finding interesting articles. And I've kind of morphed into using Evernote as my kind of bookmarking platform as well. I don't end up using Diigo a whole lot anymore, and Delicious I stopped using when I switched to Diigo. So the downside, I guess, to using Evernote as my bookmarking tool is it doesn't really have that social side of it then, but I find it just, for me, everything in one place, everything accessible on all my devices. I find it really great. And yeah, I at this point in time, I pretty much never write anything down by hand anymore. Everything just goes into Evernote as a note, and I tag it with generally with what the topic is, or if it's a home thing or if it's a work thing, and then kind of go from there. But I even find that the search function is so good on there that I don't even really need to worry about the tagging that much. I still do tag, but I don't ever really go in there and go, okay, what are all my flipped teaching things, and click on that tag. I pretty much never actually use the tags. I pretty much just use the search function. But yeah, you're right. I guess when I did kind of start here, I even did a little workshop for our staff on Evernote and stuff. So it was something that I kind of was pretty big on when I started.
Yeah, and if you're a little bit behind and you haven't watched the videos yet, Evernote is great for note-taking, clipping things off the web, organizing things that you're working on. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and we're talking about it in this course in terms of education. So I've seen it used. I personally use it to collect evidence for my portfolio, but I'm also using it to grab notes for work on my PhD or for meeting notes, and it's just students can use this at any level, really. You could, because you have the option of it being web-based, or it works on a Mac or a PC or any device, really. Like you can use it on your Android phone, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I have it on my iPhone and my iPad, and everything's all nice and synced. So it's incredibly handy that way.
Yeah, if I couldn't use it on an Android phone, I wouldn't use it.
There you go. There you go. We did have a few questions, comments from students in the course on the discussion forum. So I'm going to look at some of those. Karen asked, I'm really interested in using Evernote for e-portfolios, so I hope you discussed that quite a bit. Sorry, not a question, but a request, and that's fine, Karen. Like I said, I use Evernote to collect all the evidence for my portfolio. So if I'm making, I get an email that I think should go in my portfolio, somebody commenting about something I've done, or I complete a workshop, that I'm taking a workshop, and I get some sort of certificate for that, then I'll take a picture of it, or I'll take a picture of it. Generally these days I don't scan very much, and I can easily just send it to Evernote, and I can just tag everything as portfolio. Now if I want to make it public, to do that you have a couple of options. One, you can just use it as your repository and you collect all your information there, and you can select something else, somewhere else that you might share it. So I have a blog, and my blog tends to serve for me as my portfolio for public consumption at this point, because I have my CV on it, and I have links to some podcasts I've done, and my reflections, because my blog posts are there, my educational information is all there. So that really is my portfolio. But all the evidence is collected in Evernote. You could also use it and collect all your evidence and tag everything in Evernote as portfolio or something like that, and then create a folder for the stuff that you want to share, and then share that folder with whoever you want to be able to see your portfolio. And I think you can make a folder public even if you wanted, right, Ryan? Could you? I know you can make individual documents.
I'm not 100% sure. Those are features that I kind of haven't played around with.
Okay.
And by folder, you mean notebook? Or?
Yes, thank you. Notebook.
Yeah.
Every tool calls it something else.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but probably.
Okay.
And basically, when you mean by public, you'd be able to post a link to it?
Yeah, and so anybody who had the link would be able to see it. And I know you can do that with individual notes. But again, if you wanted to just limit it to certain people, you could do that. And with Evernote, you can pull in PDFs, Word documents, images. Basically, I've never tried to pull in like a video or anything, so I'm not sure how that would work. But you can pull in a link if you've got the media somewhere else. I know that for sure. And Karen, I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, feel free to post some more on the discussion forum or send us a note or whatever. But those are sort of the ways that I can see using it as an e-portfolio.
So I guess you kind of talked about it in terms of you personally. So say you were teaching and you wanted students to use it for portfolios. How would you maybe go about organizing that?
Well, what I would probably do is have the students tag things as portfolio, and then if there were different categories of types of evidence you're looking for in the portfolio, then I would probably have them also add a tag for what type of evidence it applied to, and putting it all in one notebook within Evernote. So that way it's organized. And you can. This is one of the great other things about Evernote is you can actually create a page, a note, that has links to other notes in Evernote. So that students could even create a table of contents for their portfolio, and then it would be links to other notes within that notebook to say this is evidence of this, and this was evidence of this, and even within that they can link back to each other. It works very much like a website that way, in that users have that ability to link to notes. And so that's a way that you can organize it, is to have a table of contents page. And then from there, just have them, it could take them to wherever in that whatever Evernote they wanted. Or if it linked to, a YouTube video they made, they can have a link that goes out to that, or any other file that's online.
It's pretty powerful tool, and there's so many different ways to use it, and so many different features that I use Evernote every day, but lots of features I've never even used. Right? There's the whole sharing notebooks feature that's part of the premium account, which we kind of experimented with one time. Have you done any more with that, or?
I haven't, because I haven't had a project that warranted it lately. But I know that it is a feature of premium, in that it's not just that you share it so that they can see it, but that people can actually collaborate back and forth in that notebook. And then you designate who you're going to share it with, and only one person involved on the team needs to have the premium account to make that happen. And that would be the person who would share the notebook.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, an Evernote notebook could kind of turn into a folder on Google Drive sort of idea. Right. You could have different notes in there, just like different Google Docs, and be collaborating and stuff within there. So there's some interesting features with it that way, which I haven't spent too much time exploring, but are pretty interesting and exciting. Another cool thing with Evernote is the whole handwriting recognition part of it. Which
You're funny.
So basically, if you write a note by hand, so say you're a person who likes to do a lot of handwritten notes as opposed to typing things in, you can actually, you could just use a regular piece of paper and take a picture of it and put it into Evernote, or scan it and put it into Evernote. And if your writing is decipherable, Evernote will actually be able to search the words within your file. So I've only done that a little bit because, as I said, primarily I do everything by typing it into Evernote. But there have been a few meetings over the years where I haven't typed things out and I've scanned things, and it actually has worked. So that's a pretty neat feature.
Yeah, and I was laughing at the beginning, and Ryan knows this, that my writing is actually quite illegible, and so Evernote can't search mine. But I do have an Evernote notebook that I take notes in. And the benefit of that for me is that I can use the stickers that it comes with, and Evernote can read those, and I designate what I want it tagged as. So it's not going to search the text in it, but it'll put a document in my tags, and then if I want later, I can go back and add some typing into that note even once it's in Evernote, and add whatever search functionality I needed to have then. So I could write a little blurb explaining what I've taken all this notes on if I need to.
So we talked a bit about using Evernote kind of for portfolios, kind of thinking of other ways it might be used in education. I personally see it more as a really good tool to kind of inform students about. I don't, in a lot of ways I probably wouldn't necessarily make it a mandatory part of my teaching, but I would highly recommend it as a tool for students. I see it really powerful, in terms of just being able to save things there and be able to search things there, and be able to grab resources off the web. So Heather mentioned a little bit about the clipping feature. So basically I've got the Evernote web clipper installed in my web browser, and so anytime I come across something on the web that I want to save or I don't want to forget, all I do is I hit that web clipper button, and it doesn't just give me one option, it gives me a variety of options. So I can save it as an article, so basically it'll grab the kind of big main chunk of text on the page and save that for me. I can save it as a simplified article, which is basically that same chunk of text minus any ads and things like that, which is kind of nice sometimes. Sometimes you just want to pick that when you're even just viewing a web page. Full page, it'll actually save everything there. Bookmark, so it can just save the bookmark, which is actually the option I pick fairly frequently because I don't really spend too much time looking at how much space things take up on Evernote, but I just taking something as a bookmark is going to be, for sure an easy way to not use up much of my allocated, syncing space. Or I can do a screenshot. So basically, I can just, grab part of a web page and it'll take it just right there as an image. And that's something I've actually started doing recently. Kind of funny. I do it for like coupons that I see on the internet. I'll grab a quick screenshot of it and pop it into my Evernote. Which basically some of the like coupon pages and stuff like that, they disappear after a few days, even though the coupon may still be out there. So not really an educational purpose, but an interesting purpose. One thing really cool about Evernote, though, is if you do the article or the simplified article or the full page, it actually takes a snapshot of it at that time. And so Heather, you used that feature when you were grading student blogs a couple of years ago. I want to just kind of mention how you used that.
Yeah, I was able to, by doing that, it basically took a screenshot of it, it was an easy way to take a screenshot of it. And I could see clear, because the thing with blogs, with using something like WordPress or Blogger, is that you can set sort of when the blog, you can change the date as to when the blog post comes out. And so if blog posts were due on a certain date, students would have had the ability to backdate things that they submitted late because of that feature. So I would go in and say the morning after they were due, I would go look, and so they had even extra hours because I wasn't staying up to look at this. but I would go in and I could take a quick shot if I wanted to of the front of their blogs, and it would show me. This is what's been posted so far. So if on 3 days later, say Monday morning or something, a couple days later, a blog post was suddenly there and it was dated for Friday, I could say, whoa, it wasn't there Saturday. And I didn't have anybody doing that, but it was a small class, so it didn't take me a lot of time to do that. But it was something that I actually did to show them that if they were using this in their classes, they could do this with Evernote or taking a screenshot using some tool. And if you're actually using an RSS reader, you could probably just take a screenshot of the subscriptions in your RSS reader of which ones had come in, which feeds had come in. So that's one way of doing it. Or something that people would have the ability to change the content of, or backdate or something like that. It's a nice way of capturing that. Or pages that you want to make sure that you grab because let's say a student has written something inappropriate on somebody else's blog. That's a great way to capture that and have that image even if they go in and delete their comment. So you have that. It's a way. Lots of people are taking screenshots these days when they see something online that somebody has tweeted, whether it's a business or a politician or any individual, because they grab that evidence of something. And this is just another way of doing that, and it has a lot of uses in the classroom and outside.
Yeah, and a lot of times people kind of worry about how web pages, they may grab something one year and then they go back the next year and they go to teach the class again and the page is completely changed. But if you actually clipped it into your Evernote, it'll actually have that kind of archived version of it. So that's, in some ways is a really nice feature. Maybe in other ways it's not, but it's kind of cool to have it that way. It's kind of a bit of an archiver there. Which, say you were grabbing things, images, quotes, things like that, and you were using them within your teaching, and you wanted to, reference them, right? That would be a good way, maybe, to just clip all the pages that you got the things off of, so that if you go there the next year and it's like, whoa, this web page is totally changed, right? You'd be able to refer back to that archived version you have of it within your Evernote. So,
yeah. We had a question. This was a technical question from Oksana, and she asked a question about Evernote, and she wanted to know if there was an easy way to copy it in the Notes app on an iPad or iPhone to Evernote. And yes, there's a very easy way of doing it because you can actually email notes from the Notes app on an iPad or a phone. And when you get an Evernote account, if you go into your account information, you'll see that there's an email address that goes with it that lets you email anything to Evernote. So you can email stuff from Notes, you can forward emails that you get, anything that you can send as an email, you can actually send to Evernote. So I hope that answers your question about that, Oksana. You also asked about that you're using Pinterest as a bookmarking tool. And there are some things that I use Pinterest for myself, usually things that are very, I want the graphic. That's really what I want to stand out as the bookmark. And I might save that to Pinterest to share as well as to Diigo and Evernote. But your follow-up to that was that you want to know if we had any experience using it in the classroom. And I haven't. I have heard people mention this online, but I've never seen it actually used. Ryan, I know that you're not a Pinterest person, but do you have any thoughts on how it might be useful in the classroom compared to any of the other tools?
I think it would be, I've seen it used. I know actually Rebecca uses it, or used to use it a little bit, and it would be, she would just have like a pin board for the class she was teaching, right? So she would pin a variety of things, related to, the topic of the course, and then point students towards that pin board. I think it's what it's called. Is that what it's called on Pinterest, a pin board?
Yeah, I think so.
And so I don't know, does Pinterest have any social features like that you know of? Like,
Well,
you have a
yeah,
collaborative pin board?
I don't know if you can have a collaborative pin board, but people can follow you, and I'm kind of curious, however. Um,
But yeah, that's how I've seen it used in education is that basically just the instructor, right, has a pin board and uses it to kind of just curate different materials and then point students towards that pin board.
let's check in. Let's go back. Unlike Diigo and Delicious, Pinterest seems to want me to log in to really see. Says there's more to see. Sign up to discover and save different things to try in 2015. And if it gives me two buttons, log in and continue. I can scroll and look, but there's a big bar at the bottom of the page now. And if I hit continue, it basically wants me to sign up for an account, which I've already done, or it wants me to log in. So that's a little bit of an annoying feature because I know that if you go to if I go to
Oh yeah, I went to the link that I got a couple of years ago, and
yeah.
it's like, yeah, there's this big bar saying, you know, there's more to see. Sign up and save, and basically it's forcing me to like sign in, which is probably a newer feature
Yeah.
that Pinterest didn't used to have. But I guess there were probably a lot of people that were just, you know, looking at it, and they want people to be signed up as opposed to just looking at it.
Yeah. So I'm actually on Delicious right now looking around. And there's a whole bunch of bookmarks on the front page that I seem to be able to access. So I guess one of the things that would come up with that is that if you wanted to use it in the classroom, it sounds like students would, even if it's you sharing things, it looks like the students would probably be looking at having to have an account. Whereas if you wanted to share, you created a page of tags of a whole bunch of different resources, and it was for Delicious or Diigo, I don't think they have to log in, right, Brian?
They didn't have to a couple of years ago, anyways. So
Okay.
I'm assuming you don't have to.
Okay. So that's something to look for because especially if you're looking at maybe K-12 education, students may not be able to get accounts for some things, depending on where you are or what the rules are, the policies are at your school. And when you get into higher ed, the students may not want to create another account because they already have so many accounts, which is something that Ryan and I were discussing earlier, is that if you're thinking about using tools like this in your classroom, ask your students what they're already using, and then find out, okay, do you want to use that tool or do you want to use something different for this class? Because maybe, you know, students might be using Facebook, although it is falling out of popularity with younger people these days, but they may not want to use it for education. They might want to keep their personal life separate than their school life. And so you need to take that into account and don't just say, well, all my students are using Pinterest or all my students are using Diigo or all my students are using Twitter. So great, I'm going to use that for the class, because they may not want to mix those, and you're going to hit resistance.
Yeah. So just in terms of collaborative pin boards, I just quickly searched that, and yes, that's something you can do. And you set up a board. You can either set that just you can pin, or me and contributors, and you can put in all the people that you want to contribute to it. So not something that's probably would be all that practical in a really large class, but in a smaller class might be something that you could look at doing if it's a tool that students are already, you know, using and are interested in using. So kind of in a similar way, that's how I've seen Diigo used in an education setting as well. Right? So I was in a class, and in that class we had the instructor was using Diigo to basically just curate resources for the course. And in that course, I don't think the rest of us were part of that group, but there is a grouping feature on Diigo as well, which is something that we use actually here at the Gwen Moss Center. Heather, you kind of run that. Want to talk a little bit about the group feature on Diigo?
Well, I'm not sure if there's different settings for this, but I can tell you how we're using it. So I set up a group in Diigo. I had an account and I set it up. And different people around our teaching and learning center got Diigo accounts. And they gave me what email addresses they used to create those accounts, and I sent them from the group invitations to join. So the way it's set up is anybody who I invited to join, who works here, they can add bookmarks that show up in our group. So only people from our center can add bookmarks to the group. But the group is public in that any bookmarks we share to that group are public for anybody to see anywhere in the world. If you can access Diigo, you can see the bookmarks that we're sharing there, which is handy because we have control over who saves the bookmarks, but it's a great way of us being able to share resources with faculty here on campus or at the university or anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've saved bookmarks on there, and it's nice. When I find an article online that I think would be good to share in that way, so a lot of the things I say, this is kind of interesting to me, and I'll put that into my Evernote. If I think, this would be interesting to kind of everybody, I'll click on my Diigo toolbar, right, and then I'll choose the group I want to save it to, and I pick the Gwen Moss Center group, and then we can put in kind of a bit of a blurb about what the resource is about or what the article is about, or you can actually just copy things, highlight things within the text that'll go into that box, and then there's also the whole tagging feature with it as well, right? So it's not just like it goes into a huge Gwen Moss Center Diigo page, right? It does that, but then you could go to our Gwen Moss Center Diigo page, and if you want to see articles on blended learning, right? There's going to be a tag for blended learning. There's going to be a tag for maybe experiential learning or different things like that. So if this was done really well, right, there would be kind of a discussion amongst the people doing it, and you'd kind of come up with a tagging structure. We didn't really get to that point too much, but something that helps with that is when you're actually tagging things in Diigo, it'll kind of show you common tags for that group, which is nice. So you're not just always making up new tags, right? So if I'm going to tag something, it's like, oh, well, these are tags that have been used in this group already, and I'll kind of pick some of those ones that work with it. So that's kind of a nice little feature.
Yeah.
And that's actually something we didn't mention with Evernote. In Evernote, with the tagging, if you clip something off the web, it actually will suggest tags for you. So it kind of has an idea as to what sort of topics are going into your different tags. It's not always right, but it's often quite right.
Yeah. And on that, because of the autofill and the way I want to talk about in Evernote. Sometimes when you grab something, when you've done a web clip, or even when you start taking notes, you'll see at the bottom of an Evernote, of the new note you're creating, it'll point out other notes that you have in your Evernote and say, these may be related to this, which is kind of nice because you can actually link to one of those if you wanted to, or it might remind you that, hey, I've already got something on this. I forgot about that. I attended a meeting on this last year, and those notes come up and remind you, which is incredibly handy to help connect ideas that you're working on.
I wonder if that's a premium feature, because I've actually never seen that. But
really? Okay.
but it's possible that I just lately I've actually often, when I'm writing notes on a certain series of meetings, I'll just go into that same note and add to it. So maybe I just haven't come across that situation. But it sounds like a nice feature.
It is. It is. I'm looking to see what it lists under their premium features. Yes, related notes. You discover your content. As you're creating notes, Evernote surfaces, I think it's supposed to be surfs. You're previously...
or searches.
Searches, yes. Previously created content that may be connected to what you're currently working on. The more you type, the more refined the results will be, letting you focus on what's relevant and important in the moment.
Oh, you know something else that Evernote does that's kind of creepy, but I'm not sure. Not sure how it actually does it, but it. I don't know if it does it for you, but it actually pulls from my calendar what event I'm at or what meeting I'm at, and if I go to create a new note, it'll suggest a name for the note based on that.
Wow.
So if I went to create a note right now, it would say something like, Google Hangout with Heather or something would be like the name of the note.
Oh, that is a little bit weird.
So I'm not sure when I made that connection. It's kind of cool, but also kind of strange.
Well, I'm trying to remember what the Evernote compatible. It's one of their things. What's the one that you can write? Penultimate?
Oh, yeah.
Every time I do that on my iPad, it makes the name of the notebook where I am.
Yeah.
Like the location.
Yeah.
And yes, it doesn't do that in Evernote, but it does that in Penultimate. I find that incredibly creepy.
Yeah, so right now I just started a new note on my phone here, and it says, "Note from Hangout, Heather and I at Saskatoon, Saskatchewan."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, except when in Penultimate, like I've been in Moose Jaw at the spa, and I've started a note there, and it has the address of the spa. It's like, no, don't.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
must
want to know
have,
that much.
different location services stuff turned on, and so
Yeah,
there's some interesting features in there that, you might want turned on, you might not want turned on, but it's kind of cool that it does it.
A little creepy, but yeah. So there are a number of features that are part of Premium that don't show up in and if you've missed this, most of the basic stuff we're talking about, that's all free for either Evernote or Diigo or Delicious and even Pinterest when they're asking you to sign up for an account. All of the basic features of it, all of these things are free, and you can really get by with the basic features for the most part. It depends on what you're doing, but your students certainly can, so they won't need to pay for anything. There was another comment here.
So the one from Stephanie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and read that? Or?
All right, so Stephanie in the course is wondering about incorporating these. She says, "I'm wondering about whether incorporating these great tools ever has the unintended consequence of excluding learners or colleagues who are not confident to try them out, or do try but get frustrated because of personal limitations or a desire to not spend so much of their lives on screen. Do you have any experience or suggestions in this regard?"
Well, one thing is, depending on how you want to use the tool. If you want to use it so that you can share resources with other people, they don't have to get accounts for most of these things. They don't have to have accounts for Diigo or Delicious for you to say, this is the page where I'm sharing all this. They can just go and see that page without ever signing up. You can use Evernote, and you can mail, just as you can mail stuff into Evernote, you can mail stuff out of Evernote. And so again, they don't have to be using the tool for certain of the functionality, the benefits that you can get from it. They don't need to be using that tool necessarily. Now, I mentioned a little bit before about you have to be careful what the policies or guidelines are at the school you're at in terms of privacy, whether it's K-12 or post-secondary or some other institution. You still need to be aware of what things might be prohibited at your school. Another thing is, and I know that if there's K-12 teachers watching this, they'll say, yes, absolutely, school filters can be incredibly hard on trying to use some of these tools because they might block Diigo or Delicious or Pinterest or something, or student access to the web version of Evernote, which but try and talk to your IT people and see what you can do. If they've got a problem, if they can give you why, no, we're blocking this and this and this, talk to them and find out, explain how you want to use it in teaching, and see if you can come to some sort of agreement on how you might use it or what other options there may be available. Students, I don't know, and somebody might say, no, you're wrong, Heather, but I don't know that I've heard of anybody blocking Evernote, like the web version of it. And
Not that I know of. Yeah.
no, and if students have devices and they can install Evernote on their device and they can do the work, and then if for some reason they can't sync in the classroom, then their notes are there. So as soon as they get somewhere where they have wireless access or data, they can just sync it back to the server and it'll be on all their devices. And so that part's handy. And again, if you have a premium Evernote account, you can actually, Ryan, we were talking about this the other day. Is it only premium still that is offline, or can you do it?
From what I was testing there, and in the premium list it says access your notes offline. So if you have a free account, you can access some stuff offline, but not everything will be there. Like any images and things like that weren't there when I tried it the other day. But
Okay.
From what I was finding, the text things that I had put in were there, but I would say that's probably not 100%, across the board.
Right. Right. But with premium, you do have, if you designate a notebook as offline, as long as you sync it before you use your internet connection, then you can access that stuff offline. Hey, we got a new question. Came in from Alex in the course. He's asking about something completely unrelated, and he says that. But he says, off topic, but I was curious as to what browsers you all are using. I find I'm loath to give up Firefox, but I would switch, provided there was a really good reason to. Alex, I'm using Firefox because I found it to be the least annoying. My plugins all work, so I have a plugin. I have the little widgets where I can easily send stuff to Evernote, which is handy. And a bunch of other tools that I use. I used to use Chrome for a while, but it seemed to be getting slower and slower and slower, and my computer was getting slower and slower and slower every time I used it. And for me, it had been the reverse with Firefox previously, which is why I had switched away from it. And when I asked, is Firefox still a memory hog on Twitter, the response I got was, no, actually Chrome's the memory hog now. But I switched probably about a year ago, so I don't know if there's been a change since then. Ryan, I'm not sure what you're using.
I use Chrome. I pretty much use Chrome all the time. Been using it, for the past 5 years now, and I'm happy with it. But I think I could switch to Firefox and be just as happy with it. The thing with Chrome that I like is that I use Chrome on my desktop, I use Chrome on my phone, I use Chrome on my iPad, right? So I like that integration across. Firefox does have a browser on everything now, do they not?
I don't know. I've never tried to put one on my iPhone.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Firefox is on there, but yeah, Chrome is on those devices now, and it's it's one of those things, right, where it tracks everything you do. So it in that way it kind of helps to integrate things. So the commonly visited sites on the computer show up as commonly visited sites on my iPad and in that case, I've actually started to use Bookmarks a little bit, but exclusively for guitar tabs. But so I have that synced across the devices, which I like. But the big thing with using Chrome, and it's the same with Firefox, are those extensions, right? The little buttons we can add to the toolbar, which I think Firefox and Chrome are probably the best for those. So I think Safari kind of has that, but I don't think it's as good in my experience. But I haven't really tried to ever commit to using Safari because I was a avid Chrome user before I started using Apple computers. So I haven't even really given Safari a try. But yeah, I think Chrome or Firefox are both really good, and they both have a really big library of extensions. So basically any one of these tools that you are interested in using that we talk about in this course or other tools you find, there's going to be a little button that you can put up in your toolbar that works with that app. So
Yep.
I've got the Diigo button up there, got the Evernote button up there, and I've got some other buttons for the different tools that I use as well.
Yep. Yep.
So I think in terms of that, I think either of those tools are good. And every now and then I do kind of get drawn towards using Firefox, but it's just not a leap that I've made yet. I might sometime. But then again, I actually just switched to using Chrome on my phone like 2 weeks ago, so the chances of me switching now are probably pretty small.
There you go. There you go. So hopefully that answered your question. If anybody else wants to chime in on Twitter or on the discussion forum, you're more than welcome to, about what you're using. Do we have any more?
I've got a couple of things I jotted down to comment on. Another kind of neat thing with Evernote, and I think I have it turned off, I'm not sure if you do, but you can actually have Google search your Evernote notes if you want. So basically, if you were searching something on Google and you wanted it to search the web, but you also wanted to find if you had things already in your Evernote related to that topic, that's actually something you can turn on it. So it's not something I've turned on, but it is kind of a neat feature, because you might be like, oh, I'm looking up this topic, and then it'll search and it'll go into your Evernote and realize that you've actually already saved a couple articles on that or something like that. So it's kind of a neat feature. Another thing on the other discussion board, the one just talking about social bookmarking in the course, a lot of people were really, really kind of excited about the idea of using like the social bookmarking tool, like Diigo, as opposed to just using the bookmarks on their computer, because they were using bookmarks and they're putting things into folders, and then they couldn't find things in the folders. And that's, again, a nice advantage of these things is that, right, you can do all the organizing you want. You can, in Evernote, put things into different notebooks, and you can tag things, but you also have that search function. And Diigo has that search function as well. So no matter where you put it within your structure, or maybe you go with no structure at all, that's kind of up to you, but no matter where you put it, you can search it, and you're going to find that, as opposed to, all right, now did I put it in this folder? Scroll down, look through all those. No, did I put it in this folder? No, and keep going. It's got the search function. The search function works really, really well. I'd say especially in Evernote, in my experience, it works really well. And another thing is that people kind of talked about when they would use the folder structure, they're kind of like siloing things. It's like, okay, this article, where does it go? I have to decide which folder it goes in. Okay, I'm going to put it into the, say in my case, I'll put it into the eCur 398 folder. That's one of the courses I teach. But that article also would relate to eCur 322. So what am I going to do? Am I going to put it into both of those folders, or what? But when I use something like Evernote, I can tag it eCur 398, eCur 322, right? I can tag it as both of those things. And then it's not living in either of those, it's kind of living in both of them, which makes it really easy to find.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that I've been using Bookmarks a lot longer than you have, because I remember having the drop down and then this folder and this folder, and where did I put, and I switched browsers, and where are all my bookmarks, and how do I get them in here, and so I'm happy to not have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's, I never really used bookmarks in that way, but I know my wife did, and yeah, she'd have this crazy structure of bookmarks, and she'd like spend like a full day like organizing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, no tool is perfect. When Diigo first came out, and I have a blog post about this that I wrote a number of years ago, but they really, really made me angry. And there was two things. First of all, they said you can export your bookmarks from Delicious and import them into Diigo. And so I did that, except they imported them in reverse chronological order, which really annoyed me because so they were backwards from the way they had been in Delicious. Instead of my newest bookmark being at the top of the list, my first bookmark that I ever made was at the top of the list. So that was the first thing. And then I logged in. I'm trying to remember what the login process was or creating my account, and they basically, I don't know if it was through Google or some other thing I was using, they basically, oh no, I remember what it was. It said that I could input who my friends were from something, and I could see if any of them had Diigo accounts, so that I could follow them. I could see their bookmarks, and I thought, well, that's great. Except for everybody else, it seemed to send out a mass invite to Diigo to everybody else who was in my address book.
Mm-hmm.
And they seemed to think this was a good feature at first. And I think that changed because this was a number of years ago. And I left Diigo and I said, I don't care about this. And I went to Delicious. And I don't know what took me back, but I've been very happy with their service since then. So I think that they did work out the kinks. But that would have been that was a bad start. And I think one of the reasons that maybe I was leaving Delicious was they got sold, right? They were Yahoo, and I'm not sure they are anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The main thing I remember around that sort of stuff was a couple of years ago, there was kind of an exodus from Diigo based on kind of something they had in their user agreement language.
Yeah.
Right? So those are always things that you kind of want to check into when you're signing up for different services, but.
Yeah, but one of the things I do like about them is the ability to export your stuff, which you can't do with every tool. And so if you do, if there are changes and you suddenly don't like a user agreement or something, then you can get your content out and take it to another tool. Or I'm trying to think, it was Delicious or something. You had this option of spitting it out into basically an HTML document, maybe, and you had like this page then of just your bookmarks. That wasn't live. It was it was live. The bookmarks were live, but nobody else could see it. I don't know if there's any way to get your mass exodus out of Evernote. Is there?
I don't know. I don't intend to leave.
No, but it was just sort of this, once I got my stuff in there, how do I get everything out? That's probably something we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and that's actually I was going to mention that we're talking a lot about Evernote, which is one of these note tools, but these days there are quite a few.
Yeah.
And there's OneNote, I think. Is that the Microsoft one?
It is.
I think so, and that's a tool that they've really been pushing to try and kind of overtake Evernote. Evernote kind of took, the world by storm the last couple of years. Microsoft's really been working with their Evernote product, and I know they've been offering it for free to Mac users and all sorts of things lately to try and get people in there. So I haven't actually looked at it, but if it's a tool that you're using, to the people out there watching, right? Give us some comments about it. What do you think of using OneNote, or are there other tools that you use? Are there features that we've mentioned about Evernote that those ones don't have, or are there features that Evernote's missing that those ones have? I assume they're probably pretty similar products these days. Now that OneNote is cross-platform, and pretty sure it works on phones and everything now too. But yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about the different tools out there.
So Tim in the course posted to the discussion forum just now a bit of a follow-up to Alex's question, which was off topic, but that's okay. Aside from Diigo and Evernote, are there other particularly useful browser extensions / tools you use or would recommend? One thing that kind of goes with Evernote is, Ryan, I don't know if you use Clearly.
I didn't know it still existed. I used to use it.
Okay, I don't know if it does either. I forgot I had it, and so I stopped using it, and I don't know. But it used to take the ads away. Everything except for the main thing you were reading, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, so it was when I mentioned the web clipper, there was that the option of the simplified page, and that was the same idea as what Clearly would do. It would just basically remove all the ads and kind of simplify the page, which on blogs, right, if you have a free blog platform, you might have all these ads and stuff in there that you don't want to actually see, so that was a nice way to go around that. It looks like it still exists. And the thing with that was you could actually do that without clipping it to Evernote. You could just click clearly, and it would clean up the page for you right there in your browser to read it.
Yep.
With the web clipper version, it makes it simplified, and then that's the version that goes into your Evernote. So it clearly would save that step.
In terms of other extensions, it really depends on what you use, Tim, as to what's going to be useful to you. So, but you can look and see. Like, I don't know if you're using a Mac or a PC, but it depends on what other tools you're using. Like Ryan, I'm sure has clipping tools for certain specific tools that he uses. I have, like, there's one you can get for, if you use Pinterest, that's another one that you can add the pin it button from. I have a little JavaScript thing that I picked up that was, I use OmniFocus on my Mac and all my Mac devices, and I have a little JavaScript button that I can click on it, and it'll open up a window to send something I've got offline to OmniFocus, something I want to read later. If you're using certain, in Firefox at least, I'm drawing a blank on the citation manager, the open source one.
I can list off some citation managers, but I'm not sure. There's like EndNote. There's
open source citation manager. Quick Google search. Zotero. I think it's Zotero. Zotero, you can add an add-on to your browser for that to send things to your Zotero account. So if you're using that for research, if you're either a researcher or you're a grad student or whatever, it can be quite handy if you're using that. Ryan?
I can talk about one that I kind of recently started using. It's one called LastPass, and it's kind of, a little bit scary to use, but it's actually it's a password manager actually, and it appears to be highly secure. And what it does is you sign in to LastPass within your browser, and then if you want it to, it can save the logins and passwords for the different websites you go to, and then basically when you're logged into LastPass, they automatically fill. When you're not logged into LastPass, they don't. And so I've got it set that when I step away from my computer for a couple minutes, it signs out of that, and then I sign back in when I come back. And I'm liking using it. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it, but it's something to kind of check into. And the big thing with that is, right, these days sites are getting hacked all the time, and I don't really want to be using the same password from site to site to site to site. And so by using this, it's kind of helping me switch up passwords. But it's kind of a neat little extension that I'm not exactly sure how I feel about, but I've been trying it out. Another one that kind of totally different kind of topic is one that I've been using called, it's Stay Focused, and it's one that I've got a few different websites. Basically, you create like a list of websites that you don't want to be wasting your time on, and then you set how long in the day you can go to those websites, and basically every time you load up one of those web pages, the timer starts going. And then once you reach the end of that time limit, then for the rest of that day, you're blocked from accessing those sites. Right? I could circumvent it by going to a different browser or something. But if I'm using that browser, and I've actually found that that's actually really made a difference for me. There's a few sites, especially when I'd go home in the evening and I'm supposed to be marking something or prepping something, and I get on the computer and it's just like, let's check this out, and that one's actually really helped. So that one it's Stay Focused, and focused is without an E in it, and it's that's one tool like that. There's a bunch of tools like that, but that's the one I've been using, and it seemed to work pretty well. One time I changed the time limit that I had, and it was like, are you sure you want to do this? This is kind of going against the point.
That's great. It's your mom.
It was kind of funny.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Real quick, our hour's up.
I know, but there's no limit. Google Hangouts are free.
There you go.
I use the link shortener Bitly quite a bit, so I
Yes.
actually have an extension in my browser for that. So that's one that you might want to check out if you like to kind of shorten links a lot, which I do quite a bit. I create a lot of like surveys and things like that for students to go to, and I don't want to be, have them typing in really long addresses or me having to email them the addresses all the time. So I use Bitly as a tool to just create short little custom links and then give it to the students. So I've been using Bitly, and I have that in my toolbar. Another one that I think is a little bit on the borderlines of legality is one called HOLA, so HOLA, and that's just a little quick VPN one. So if I try to access something, say, on a US site, and it says, this isn't available in your area, that's just one right in the browser. You can just click that button, and you could pretend you're in the US and use it. It's not something I use a lot, but there's just, a few times where that's, you just quickly want to check something and you don't want to go around trying to find the Canadian version of it. And so that's kind of one that I've actually seen a lot of people using, so it is getting to be pretty popular. But like I said, the legality of that one I think is a little bit iffy.
Yeah. Alex added that he really likes Pocket for saving articles to read later offline, and it makes for an easy reading app for, quote, older eyes. I've used Pocket as well, and that is another one that you can get a browser extension for. So basically what it is we'll send it to your Pocket account, and then if you sync your device to your Pocket account before you go anywhere, you can do all that reading offline, which can be handy if, say, you commute, but not driving, but like bus or train or something like that to and from work. You can get some reading done without using up any of your data on your device, because you can sync it before you, say, leave the office or the school, and or home if you're going out somewhere, and access it because you can access reading off all the stuff offline. And it's missing, and again, it's going to be missing. It's got like just what you need to read, and otherwise, it's a nice clean interface.
Yes, Safari actually is something built in for read for later. I think I've never played around with that. I'm not sure if that works offline or not,
yeah, I don't know.
But they've got something built into it like that, but probably doesn't work offline. So yeah, Pocket, that sounds like a good option. And if you had something like, if you have a premium Evernote account, right, you'd be able to do that as well, right? You could clip something into Evernote and then access it offline.
Yeah, you can. In Pocket, you can do it for free. So that's one thing. And it also sort of creates a page of, you'll see all the things that you've listed that you need to read, as opposed to a whole bunch of different notes that would be in Evernote. And then you click on it, and it comes up bigger, and you can make it smaller. And once you're in there, if you do have an internet connection, you can actually send it somewhere. So I think you can send. I haven't used it in a while, but I think you might be able to send it to Twitter or somewhere else from that. And you can also, I think, click from there, just as you could in Evernote, to the original site, so the original article.
All right, so let's just check to see if any other questions have come along. Oh, it looks like I actually accidentally closed our discussion forum.
I don't see any new ones. I want to thank everybody who did post questions. Thank you very much. And everybody who has tuned in today or is watching the recording later. We really appreciate it. We are, again, this is week 7 of 10 for Introduction to Learning Technologies, and so far it's been a blast, I'd say, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've had some great guests, and we still have a few more coming up. And for those of you who have stuck with us, thanks. We appreciate it.
And actually, just I want to mention in there, Gabriella had asked a question about using Evernote as a bookmark tool. So we didn't specifically say that she asked the question, but that was a question that was asked within the course. So thank you as well for asking that question. But yeah, I think we're good for today.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
It was.
It's different without a guest, but
we're good enough.
Yeah. But all right, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you. Actually, the next Hangout's on Monday. So if you're watching this, the next one's on Monday.
Yes.
So it's going to come up quick.
And it's with Tim Molnar talking about e-portfolios.
Yep.
Very good. Okay.
All right. See
Thanks.
you.
Bye.